Okay, so here we go with a video that shows you how to create a database completely from scratch. I'm going to start out by creating a diagram that describes what the database looks like. Then I'm going to forward engineer it into SQL that will create the database inside MySQL. And then finally we'll write some scripts to load records into the two tables that we're going to create. So this is going to be broken out over 3 different videos, and in this video I'm going to show you how to actually get the diagram created. So I've got MySQL open here in the normal view that we've been used to, but we're going to go to a different place in MySQL to actually get this diagram created. And that is, I'm going to click on the Home button up here in the upper left, that little home icon, and I'm back on this starter screen that we're used to seeing when MySQL first opens. And what I want to do is create a new model, that is a diagram of what I want the database to look like. So I come down here in the model section and click on the plus sign, which will start a new empty model for me inside MySQL. This is all built into MySQL. It's just a separate section that we're in for creating a model. We haven't been here before. So at start, it gives it a name of MyDB, but I want to change that to employee department because this database is going to have 2 tables in it, an employee table, a department table, and then they'll be linked with a relationship that shows which department an employee works in and which employees work in a department. So I'm going to name this database employee department, and to do that I come up here on this MyDB name here and I double click on it. And it opens up a screen down here where I can overtype the name down at the bottom. So I'll type employee department. All one word, but I just capitalize the first words of each one. And they changed it up here, and then now that I'm done with this panel, I'll just close it. Now I want to add a diagram where I'm going to draw the database. So up here on the add diagram, I double click on that. And it opens up a blank diagram window for me to work with. So now what I want to do is add a note on it, the diagram, that just explains what the diagram is. So I click on the note icon here, and then click on the screen, and it just comes up the word text. To change the text inside the note, you have to open up a panel to change it, and you do that by double clicking on the note, and up pops this thing, and I'm just going to say employee department database, and then I want you to do this on all your diagrams. Put your name on it. So that's sitting now at the top of my diagram, and I can move it around by clicking it and dragging. I'm done with this panel, so I'll close it. Now the next thing I want to do is add the department table. I'm going to add my 2 tables to it, the employee and the department table. So I click on the table icon here, and then just click on the diagram to add it. And it names it Table 1, and just like anything else, when I want to change its properties, I double click on it, and it opens up the property panel underneath. I'll name this one Department. So now that's going to be the name of my table. Now I want to add columns to it. And at least in the way I design databases, I'm just double clicking down here in the column. I always have a primary key named ID. Its data type is integer. And I have the PK checked. That means primary key. NN means not null, meaning the field has to have a value in it. Every primary key has to have a value. Let me widen this up a little bit. I want them to be unique, which is also a part of being a primary key. You can't have a field, 2 records rather, having the same value for the primary key. And then I'm going to check out here AI, which stands for auto increment. That means that if I don't supply a value when I insert a new record into the table, the system will automatically assign it the next available number higher than the highest record in the table at that time. So there's my name column. Now I want to add a, that's my ID column. Now I want to add a name column. And now SQL Server, or MySQL defaults it to varchar 45. That's a variable character field, meaning it can hold from 1 or 0 up to 45 characters. I want this to be not null, meaning there's no point in adding a department record with an empty name. It can't be null. You have to supply a value for it. So that's my department table. I've added 2 columns to it. So I'm going to close this panel and move the department table over here to get it out of the way. And now I'm going to add the employee department. So I'll click on the table for that, drop it on the diagram, double click to open up the properties panel, and I'll name it employee. I always name my tables in the singular. That's just a habit that I've gotten into. We'll give it an ID column, primary key, not null, unique, auto increment. Now we'll give the employee a first name. I don't use underscores in my field name. Some people do, but it's not my particular taste. Not null, because I don't want to have a person record without a name in it, and then we'll give them a last name. Same thing, varchar 45 is fine, not null. I don't want an empty last name field. And then finally, we'll give them hire date, which is the date they were hired into the business. Hire date. This data type I want to be a date. So I drop this list down. As you can see, there's a lot of other data types in here, but I want a date for this one. Also, not null, because when you put an employee in this table, you really have to remember all these fields. You can't leave any of them blank. So now I've added the fields into my employee table, and I click on the X to close that panel, and I've got my two tables now in the database. Okay, now we want to connect these two tables because there's a relationship in the database, because there's a relationship in life, and that relationship is an employee works in exactly one department. A department can have many employees. That's just the way businesses typically work. You work in one department in whatever company you happen to be in, and your department can typically have many employees, no particular limit that's built into the database. So what we need to do now is add a relationship between the two tables that defines this connection that an employee works in one department, a department has many employees. It's a typical one-to-many relationship. So what I do is I come down here to the 1 to n, that's their way of saying many, and I click on this button here, and then now my cursor changes to have a line on it. Now, which table do I click on first? Well, you click on the many side. So an employee is on the many side, meaning a department can have many employees. So I'll click on employee first, then I'll click on department. And what it does is it adds a relationship between the two tables. Let me spread this out a little bit so you can read it easier. And it adds a foreign key here for department ID, which is meant to represent the ID of the department in which the employee works. Now, depending upon how you have MySQL configured, you may get a remark like this on the relationship. I don't like those, so I will turn it off. And the way I do it is I come up to the model menu item here and click on model options, and up pops this options box. I click on diagram. Right down at the bottom it has use defaults for the global settings. I turn that off and then clear the show captions box, and that'll get rid of the captions on the thing. Then I click on OK. Now every relationship in a good quality diagram like this one should have a label on it that describes it. Basically in English it gives a verb that describes what it is, and so a verb or a verb phrase. So I'm going to add a note here, and I'm just going to title it works in, which says an employee works in one department, an employee works in one department, a department has many employees. Now it's important in laying out a diagram like this to do it neatly. You shouldn't have jagged lines like this, and in particular, especially when you get into your project in more complex diagrams, you should never ever have a line passing behind another object. You know, for something silly like this, where a line passes behind that label. That makes a diagram very, very hard to read. So you want it's worthwhile taking the time to lay it out neatly so the lines are straight and don't have little jags in them like that. It's a bit of an eye-hand coordination test, but it's worthwhile. Now I'm going to make one more final step, and I'm going to save this model file. Come on up here and click on the Save Model File button, and it will ask me what I want to name it. I'm going to name it Employee Department, Department, and that saves the file as a .mdw, which is just the extension for Workbench model files. Click on Save, and now we have our diagram. This is just sort of a logical picture of what we want the database to be like, and in the next video I'm going to show you how to turn this into an actual database inside of MySQL.